So thank you for engaging with us today. We're here to talk about some intentional design strategies, and we named it Catalyzing Diversity and Cultural Awareness Through Student Projects. I'd like to hand it over to Laylonda first to introduce a little bit about you.
Do you want to show them the slides since that's already on our slides?
Oh, I didn't share. My bad. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It's okay. It's what I do. It's what I do.
That's why we need you.
Okay. I don't know. Do you want to start? Like you just show, I mean, it's okay. So here we go. So basically I just wanted to share a little about myself. I've been teaching in the world of academia for about 12 years. It will be 12 years in August. It's been so long, who knew? In the sciences, so biology, anatomy, physiology, environmental science, human bio, whatever you name it, I have probably taught it. And so I recently I became a learning designer, and I realized I've been doing learning design for a while now. I've been developing courses and things of that nature. And so I wanted to really be able to have a wider reach. And so that's kind of why I moved into the new position. I am still a teacher, but I am primarily a learning designer now. And so now I can really go from a higher level and really help more classes on student learning, growth, and empowerment. And something that I've really always thought about and always has been really big in my classes is that we're a community of learners. And so in order to be a community of learners, everyone has to feel comfortable, right? Because I tell them all the time, like we're going to have some awkward conversations at times because I teach biology, and sometimes you might have, we talk about genetics. Someone might look like they are from Eastern Europe, but they might actually be African American, right? Or I've had students that were Mexican who look like they're European. And so, which is, you know what, I'm not going to get into it if we talk about other places. But anyway, but I'm just saying that sometimes those interactions, when people assume from the outside, they don't realize what you might be made of in the inside, and that can be really hurtful. So that's kind of why I get into these different things to help and just equip our students to be able to handle these kind of situations. So I'll turn it over to you now, Nowell.
Okay, awesome. My name's Nowell Vincent. I've also been teaching for 12 years, and I started off practicing design. That's what I did. That was my first career choice. I managed to get myself through a master's in interior design, not really thinking that I was going to be a teacher. But like Laylonda, I felt like I could affect more people if I got in the classroom and empowered those to do the same thing, which is to learn how to practice design and serve the people that we will be building interior spaces for. So I identify with a Saudi American woman, lived a very rich life, grew up in Saudi Arabia, moved to the United States to get a formal education. I moved to Boulder actually, and then came up here. And this is actually where my father got his PhD. And then after he finished his PhD, he moved us all to Saudi Arabia. So I've kind of done a full circle of celebrating all the global travels that I've had. And I've loved living in Fort Collins and being a faculty member here at FRCC. So a little bit about me. It's all there. I basically love traveling. That is a picture that I took when I was in Saudi Arabia over winter break. And I have a huge crush on my husband. He knows it. So it's the cat's out of the bag. So let's move on to the next slide. And this is Miss Laylonda.
Okay, so when looking at what we wanted to do, Nowell is going to talk more about what she was doing in her class, but I wanted to just give, in case you didn't already have like a little background on inclusive or universal design. I would say that the big thing here is going to be that you have representation, engagement, and action. And so if you can move to the next slide. So when looking at engagement, I would really think of it, I mean, you can read the slides just like me, but one of the things that I would say, my thing is, if my students feel like, if I see my students are doing stuff, I know that they feel like it's relevant, or if I see that they keep doing assignments and they're happy about it, I that makes me happy, because in the end, it's something that I believe is that if students are interested and actively pursuing the content that you're giving them and the assignments you're giving them, then they're more likely to do the work and be happy about it and actually learn. And that's how learning happens. Learning doesn't happen with really grouchy students that are angry and disgruntled, right? It kind of blocks that pathway for them. And so really having them be engaged and looking at, I would say them being motivated and self-reflection are going to be some big ones. And then representation, for me is a big one. You know, I am, I would say, of African-American descent and some other things. And sometimes it's really hard in the sciences when there are not many people who look like me, right? And there are people who look like me who are doing science and doing amazing things, but you know, I never grew up seeing that. And that was really hard because I was like, well, maybe I'm in the wrong field. There's obviously not a lot of people who seem to, I can identify with, right? And so that's not always the biggest thing, but it can be kind of hard sometimes. And so that can kind of break up the experience, you know, it can make the experience not as helpful. And it was really hard for me, I'm going to be honest, like going through school and always seeing people that I wasn't represented. Okay. But I got through it and I made it as a thing that I was like, you know what? I'm not represented, so I'm going to make sure I'm represented. And so that's kind of where I went with that. And then actions, looking at really the communication and moving forward. And I feel like that Nowell is going to be talking more about those things in a moment. So go ahead to the next slides. All right. So when you're looking at this, there's purple and green. The purple that you see is typical 7 principles of inclusive design that you can pretty much, if you just like Google it or whatever, you're going to find those. And then the ones in green, I found some articles about diversity. And so they added a little bit to this. Like they still had these things, but they added a little bit of other stuff to it that I thought was really helpful. And I will say one of the sites that I used was from the National Disability Association, which I think is great. And they were able to also take these same things in purple and they were able to add accessibility to it, which I thought was super awesome. Now, I'm not very good at accessibility. I work on it, but you know, always. So I just wanted to mention equitable use, just providing content in multiple ways is really important. If you don't know how to do it, hit up your learning designers, your instructional designers. It's really important that the students should be able to access things. Either they're accessing it through different types of devices, or they're accessing the content in different ways in the course. And we can talk more about that later. If any of you guys have questions, I can give you examples of what that might look like. With streamlining your course, which is something that I've been really trying to help people to do when you have online students or face-to-face, if they can go in and they know exactly what they're doing, where they like everything, they know exactly what's coming up, they know what exams or quizzes or whatever assignments they're doing, or if you're doing ungrading feedback that they need to do, I feel like the more prepared you can help your students to be, the more likely they are to be able to finish your course successfully, because retention to me is really important, and retention is two-sided, and then I'll move on. But I believe retention is on the side of the instructor. So you set things up in a way that is good for your students, and then it's their job to walk through that, right? To do those things and to come to you when they need help. And so for me, retention is two-sided. And so I think that for me, that's why streamlining the course and having, you know, multiple ways of the students be able to hit the content is really important. So another one that I'm going to mention is collaboration, teamwork. I know, Nowell, you said that in your courses, you do some collaborative work. If you don't mind talking about that for a second.
Yeah, so minus our COVID experience, our students really thrive when they start to realize that they're not going to work in a silo and they have to rely on other people to help them get their work done. So from the very beginning, we usually have small teamwork, small low-hanging fruit, easy things for them to do to collaborate and co-present, because I believe in active learning in the classroom. So instead of me feeding them a PowerPoint about plumbing fixtures, you know, I assign maybe 1 or 2 different topics per team, and then they come up with a slide within a shared PowerPoint, and they're able to get to know each other, start to share some culture and in the classroom, and then also learn how to build that teamwork and be present in the world of education. As they work through their AAS or certificate, they start to get involved in more teamwork where they have a little bit higher stakes. In the world of design, it's essentially programming, schematic design, design development, and then you get into construction administration. So all these phases of design, and then when students get into a more advanced teamwork, they get to choose what they feel like they're most proficient at. And then they sign up on the board like, I feel most proficient at programming and rendering. And then I'll help scaffold all these teams together because that's what they would do naturally in the world of interiors. And they find themselves really enjoying that they don't have to do the whole thing. And then they start relying on each other, which is great, and collaborating. So it's created this culture of sharing, and much different than when I was in school, where everyone was kind of holding on to their intellectual property and not sharing out. So we love best practices, and that includes a lot of sharing and teamwork.
So we also have under tolerance for error. I like to say that this would be, when I think of this, I think of empathy. And that's something that I think that Nowell and I both share, but also we also share test to mastery, like it's a big thing. But I would say as far as empathy, something that I had to really become more robust in during the pandemic, because I felt like my students were struggling and I was like, oh my goodness, they're not going to finish assignments. They're not going to do this. And so I started to like extend deadlines here and there, and they were so appreciative. And I ended up actually having to go through many of my courses, and I started cutting out assignments and putting information in other places, because I was like, you know what, they're not making it through it. And if they're not making it through it, it's great. But if they're not learning it, then they're just taking your class. And then what? Like, I don't know, they'll take it again. I don't know. So I feel like empathy is really big right now. It definitely can be seen in many different ways. I'm sure you guys have examples of ways that you have been empathetic. And if you want, go ahead and put that in the chat, and we'll definitely we'll read some of those out if you want. That you've shown empathy to your students, because I do think that that's really important. And then we also have the test to mastery. I don't know if you've ever done this, but test to mastery is amazing. You can do it many different ways. I do it in 2 different ways. I know Nowell also does it. She can talk about how she does hers, but for me, I do it with an exam. I actually have part A and part B exam that I created during the pandemic that I'm keeping. And one part A is test to mastery. They can take it as many times as they would like to take it. And part B is pretty much all multiple choice. And so it's way harder. But what I found is so many students that part A is scaffolded learning. So if they keep taking that, it helps them with some of those part B questions that they can't go, like they can't take it. They can only take it once. And so for me, that has been a really good test of mastery that I've done. Not everyone can do that. And I'm telling you, like, there's still a lot of work that I'm working on that test of mastery. But I also have a lot of low stakes, just like assignments or quizzes that they can do multiple times, just because I just want them to keep learning the information. And sometimes students will take things like 10 times and you're like, whoa. And so I would say one thing with test of mastery is it really helps if you do pools. So you have different, like you pull from different question banks, so they're not getting all the same questions. I think that does help. And I usually do like 75% are the same and 25% is different every single time, and they have to take the whole thing over. So I just wanted to say that. And it looks like we have some stuff in the chat. So I will stop for a second and read. Since you're sharing, Nowell, this is easier for me to do than you.
Perfect.
We have a comment. History teaches us all build the work of others. Yes. Builds on all the work of others. Yes. Extending due dates. Yes. I've been doing that. Doing weekly. Oh my goodness. I do stress check-ins. I thought I was the only one. Thank you. I do video check-ins. I sometimes give them pictures of cats and dogs. It's real. I've actually had a student say, are you okay, Miss Mayans? I'm like, I'm totally okay. But are you okay is the question. Ungrading. I would love to do ungrading one day. I haven't figured it out. Deadlines, flexibility in office hours. You need to like, maybe one day we'll get together and talk about that. I would love that. Loosen up attendance. Yeah. OER, OER is amazing. It definitely helps with the financial burden. I just want to read part of this. It recognizes the financial burden that our students are under and helps remove a barrier to education while freeing up funds to pay for things like rent, food, self-care, all the things you need. Yes. Ungrading. Oh, I would love to do ungrading. A semester portfolio. Okay. How are you? So I love this. I start my classes with a how are you and how are your classes going? Also accepting late work, adding quiz attempts, meeting one-on-one. Okay, you're doing all the things. Good stuff. Just be human, supportive, but yes, right? Just care about your students. Extensions, jot them down, plans for tuning up the late work. Yes, realistic expectations. I just want to say that one thing, and I don't want to get on the soapbox because this is a whole nother type of diversity thing that we're about to talk about. But I do think that realistic expectations is by far one of the biggest things that I've been trying to help the people that I'm helping develop courses, because I do think that sometimes I've heard and I've seen things that students are expected to do in a week. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like, I don't even know if that the teacher could do that in a week. Like, it's just a lot. So yeah, thank you so much for that. Let me see. Allow students to record their reflections and play. That is really cool. I've heard of Flipgrid. Some people use Flipgrid for that. Support reschedule or change mode of the meetings. Yes, yes. Scaffolded quizzings. Yep. Okay, being a human also allows me to be human and make mistakes. Yes, because we are not perfect. Thank you. No one is perfect. Love it. Okay, so I'm gonna, because I don't want us to get too far along, but I just wanted to mention one other, some of these are pretty self-explanatory, but I just wanted to mention the last two on the bottom. And then Nowell, if you would like to chime in, you can. Otherwise, we'll be moving on to your slides, right? And the good stuff, right? I was gonna say flexibility and use is really important. Understanding that, and Nowell can talk more to this. Oh, okay, scaffolding. Okay, sorry, just looking. So looking at different ways to approach giving students different situations, which you're going to see Nowell does amazingly, by the way, which is really good because I feel like sometimes in science, I can get bogged down and I'm like, oh my goodness, I want to give them this situation, not the same one that the book gave them, but a different real life situation. Remember that relevancy, that's really important. And then the test and measure, using higher Bloom's, please, definitely. You can stay in that low level Bloom's basic. So someone was saying they didn't know about scaffolding. So please feel free to reach out to me. My first and last name is on the thing and it's just at Front Range or even at CCD if you would like to say, because I also teach for them. But scaffolding is basically where your content, as they're getting through. So if the end result is a project or if it's an exam, and you're going to see a lot of scaffolding because Nowell will be talking about that in a moment because she is scaffolding her classes. And so, but the good thing about scaffolding information is that the students, I had someone joke about it. They said it's almost like teaching to a test. And I'm like, well, I don't teach to a test. I'm like, but aren't you? Aren't you teaching to a test if all your information is getting them geared towards that exam? And I was like, oh yeah, I guess I am. But they don't know that. And so as they keep doing these low level things, by the time they get to the exam, students are like, oh, I know this. Why was I worried about it? And I was like, I don't know. I didn't tell you to be worried about it. You're the one who's stressed out about it. So I feel like scaffolding information is I'm not going to lie to you. It does take some time sometimes. But it's basically where I always use backward design. That's just me. You can use whatever you want, but I know what it's going to be on my exam, or I know what I'm trying to get them to the goals at the end of the semester. And I work backwards. And so all of my assignments, my quizzes, my everything, or I take them out, are gearing them towards, we have to do exams. So that exam. So if there's something that they're doing that isn't going to help them learn that information for that next exam, then I don't bother with it, because then it's just busy work. And if students are always doing busy work, they're either going to drop your class or they're just going to stop doing it and not drop. And that's even worse because you see them all semester, right? You're like, sending them messages like, please, please, whatever I can do. And they never respond, right? So as you scaffold, and if you're scaffolding using your blooms, you can start with very basic, straightforward questions where it's just memorizing things like that, and then start to move into what you're going to see what Nowell is doing. There might be demonstrate, it might be presenting. It's something where the students are actually showing you what they are capable of, right? You have given them the tools to be successful, and then they get to show you what they've learned. And sometimes that's in the form of an exam, but I really love, and I wish I could do this in my classes, projects, where then you really get to see it, right? You're seeing the synthesis, because that's another higher blooms, right? And so if you need more information on that, please let me know. And when you have questions towards the end, I could maybe try to do some things. But that's all I had, Nowell, if you would like to add anything or move forward.
Sure, I've got a couple points in regards to empathy, which is something that we've all been challenged with. Even more empathy than we're used to practicing, I guess, is post-pandemic. I found myself, giving away too much of my time, too many times for a student to give me an excuse on late work or not showing up for class. And so at a point we have to bring them back up, because they have to graduate and get a job and represent Front Range or wherever they went to school and become good human citizens in the community. And so I've had kind of an epiphany this semester where I was like, you know what, I have to set the bar to make sure that our students know what that bar looks like, because we live in a competitive world. And so empathy with rigor is where I stand now. I also wanted to explain that we're doing this to give value added situations to the classroom, and I believe in DEI wholeheartedly, and I want to make sure that our students get exactly what they paid for being in our program, but also give them an opportunity to start growing as humans through their experience at Front Range. So a lot of that kind of matches industry, and when we have project-based outcomes, a lot of that looks like construction documents. And so our students, they're learning a totally different language. They don't really know until they try it and they get feedback and then they do it again. So I allow for that test to mastery through construction documents and what we consider called redlining in our world. And in the real world, if you're working for a design firm as a new designer, you're going to be doing these construction documents, and then their supervisor, he or she, is going to be looking at them, correcting them, and giving back to you. So that's how we grow, is by practice. And also one last item that I wanted to make sure I talked about was the testing. So a lot of people don't believe in testing, and in the world of interior design, there's a lot of terminology that you have to be familiar with in order to be communicating with subcontractors and vendors and other design professionals. So as we're learning all of this through OER or textbooks or active learning, I'm giving them opportunities to reflect back on that terminology and its test to mastery. So they're taking that exam over and over again until they get it 100% right. And that's just another value added thing too. I just feel like they deserve to know as much as they have the capacity to learn. And then that intentional redundancy happens in our classes. So they'll see that common terminology packet, if you will, over and over again until it becomes second nature to them.
Nowell, you could go ahead and move to the next slide, but we had a question.
Oh, sure.
So one of the questions was, how do we know that, how do we know when we need to stop with if student is turning, and I'm paraphrasing, so sorry, Chuck, but a student, maybe they're turning in things, they're always turning in things late, asking, they're pushing that empathy, and they're trying to, I hate to say this, but it gets to a point where the absences and not turning in work is just overwhelming. How do you know when to stop? And so one of the things I would say is that for me, I always look at the class, and at one point I just tell them, I say, you have pushed back all these assignments. At this point, there's not even enough time this semester for you to finish. So maybe this is maybe because of your personal life. And actually let me just back up. And then I know, Nowell, you probably have something to say. I would say that one of the things I do is, if a student continually needs help, they ask for an extension one day, they ask for another one, then I say, I need to talk to you. and we form what is called an action plan. And the action plan, when we have the action plan meeting, is first of all, they need to tell me, if they feel comfortable, how many hours are you working each week? Are there any, like, how many hours are you spending on school? How many hours can you spend on school? And we go through this, and we basically go through everything. And I say, okay, because I do drop some assignments in all of my classes. And so I already know I'm going to be doing that. So I say, well, these will be dropped. So can you do these assignments by this time frame? And if so, let's get these on the date. And but if you say that you're going to do this, this is a contract between me and you. And if you don't do it, then I don't know if you'll pass the class. And I have had almost over 90-something% success rate. I actually had a student who tried to get on an action plan again. I was like, no, like, it was successful. Just stay up with the work. So that was just something that I've done, because I do think that if you allow students the whole semester, they will give you excuses. And then at one point, they're just not going to be successful in the class. So I don't know, Nowell, if you have anything before you want to move on.
Yeah, I start with one-on-one. I think the human side of things has to be addressed first, and see if there's something that you can help them with that they might be struggling with, whether that's resources, time, something in their life they're going through, and then finding those resources, like walking them down to that resource center, as we heard in our wonderful keynote speaker. And then I use the student of concern form as an early alert. So I'm not the only one now saying that I'm concerned about your academic participation, and now, you know, we as an institution care, and we're showing you that we care and we're reaching out. And then if I have to make a decision and the whole class is kind of taking advantage, some people, you know, have zoomed in, now that's becoming a thing, and we're holding campus class with Zooming, and people giving me constant excuses on why they can't. So I put my foot down and I said, this is your class. I am your instructor and I'm here to teach you. And so everybody that's taken advantage of it in the past, you're welcome. And that's exactly what I put in the verbiage. And I said, moving forward, you have one chance of being, you know, late to class or an unexcused absence, and then your whole grade is going to go down. So I had to have a hard stop. It was difficult because I want to help so badly, but I can't help somebody that does not want to help themselves. So I had to make it very equitable. And so it went to everybody, and everybody's on the same playing field. To help, I also brought in a former student. So she did a short presentation, and she happens to be multi-award winning now at the national level. And she came through and talked to the new students about being professional. And I always try to equate, you know, the difficult stuff that we're dealing with and working with in the classroom with real life. And as long as I can make that connection, I feel like using your former graduates to help inspire the students that are having a hard time is typically a success story. So those are my little tidbits on how I get people from point A to point B, which I say all the time in the classroom. We've got to get there. Any questions before we move on?
So far, we just had some talking in the chat, and there was something mentioned about looking at some of your data. And I will say something that I do, I'm trying to think of if your school has something called like class progress or something like that, you can click on that. And a lot of times if students are asking me for more time, I go in and I look, like, when was the last time they logged in? When was the last time they turned in an assignment? I mean, I usually let everyone like everyone gets one freebie just for fun. And then I do some drops here or there that are already set into the class. But when it gets to be like, oh, the student, I just go and look at the class progress. I see how much they've logged in. I've looked at how many assignments they've actually even just touched, how long they've spent in the course, how many assignments they've turned in, and I start to kind of wrap my mind around that. So that's just throwing that out there.
Wonderful. Okay, so some nitty gritty things that we really try to focus our team of interior design instructors. We believe in professionalism, as we all do, and I believe that practicing the soft skills is something that it's an evolution of being a good professional. And at one point, I had my own mentor, and I have two, and one of which is in the industry, and one of which is not, come to me and say, Nowell, your emails suck. And I was like, oh gosh. And she said, would you like some feedback on why they suck? And I'm like, you know, I'm a learner too. I have to figure this out. If my emails suck, then I need to fix them. And so that whole experience of like self-reflection and understanding why my emails sucked, they were not clear. They did not have any rhyme or reason. They didn't push anything forward. They didn't sum up. They didn't make the person on the receiving end feel like they had the next move, or also they'd have to scatter around and figure out all those resources to then make the next move. So in my emails now, I make sure that I give all of those resources. Like, here's the link that we're talking about, so you can just click on it and go back to the email. So I practice that with the students. And they, in the very beginning, it's very, I give them a scenario, they email me, and then we talk about it. And I never pull up their emails to me. I just talk about the context and all those bullet points. When you're trying to be very clear in communication, what's a good template? And so I'm a big fan of templates. Laylonda and I work together on kitchen and bath specifically, and I have a ton of templates that I use professionally that I want my students to practice with. Because as soon as you feel competent about one thing, that means you can move on to the next, and templates are fantastic for that. So I want to also talk a little bit about my background. So I had a very non-traditional upbringing in Saudi Arabia because I'm half American and half Saudi. I couldn't go to the American school, and I didn't know enough Arabic to go. I went to first grade in Arabic school, and then I dropped out. My parents took me out. And so I was homeschooled, and I was homeschooled in a town that I actually had to sneak into, which was crazy. And we homeschooled in Mrs. D. Ward's house, and she housed, there were about 12 of us, and we were all range in age from 4 to 12. And we had students in there from Taiwan, Thailand, Korea, all over the board, Lebanon, a few different countries in Africa. And it was just a really rewarding and rich cultural experience for myself. And I always said, it was not the best education we had when we were studying, English and how to write, instead of learning from a textbook, because there was no textbook that could touch, a 4-year-old and a 12-year-old in the same manner. She would have us write plays, and then we would produce plays, and then we would act in the plays. So there was this interesting dynamic of education that I had. And so when I came to the US and I started getting this very traditional experience in education, I kind of felt like, okay, that was me. This is new. This is what I have to work with. And I always kind of look at the lens of a new student that might have a different background, that's trying to be kind of put into a classroom, that we have these best practices in education. So I always want to promote seeing different backgrounds. And so we've developed this kind of client pool, and I want all of our students to have an opportunity to study different backgrounds. And different backgrounds can be in race, ethnicity, in physical ability, socioeconomic status, and in gender identity. And so the more that we can include as this is our world that we live in, and they're seeing that and breathing it, doing research on it, and pulling together and championing these people, they grow. And again, that's that value added component. Lastly, on this slide, I love that saying, feel comfortable feeling uncomfortable, whether that's presenting for your first time and taking the I out of the presentation because it's about your client, not yourself, or presenting on a culture that you've never even really given paying any homage to until you actually had a client that was from a different country and had a whole different set of beliefs than you did. And so all of that feeling comfortable, feeling uncomfortable happens in our class from the very first time that they step into the classroom through our program.
And Nowell, someone asked, I know you're about to get into your class, but someone did ask about the templates, and would you be willing to share any of your templates that you have?
You bet. I can do the perfect email, which is, what somebody else considered the perfect email. How to digitally manage your world, and that's something that I'm still learning, by the way. But it's a good way to practice as a new student. How do you set up your external hard drive or OneDrive, and then keep everything organized so you can practice and use that template for every single class? Absolutely, will do.
And then I feel like there was a question, one more, and then we'll get into the project. And then if you have questions, put them in there, and I promise we'll get back to them after she's talked about her project, okay? It says, what about students who self-censor themselves to avoid making others feel uncomfortable? And I wanna say something real quick, and then you please go on and do what you do best. I would say that you're gonna have that no matter what, but what you can do is the more that they feel like they're in a community, the less they start to come out of that shell, right? And so I think that, like things, getting the class to do stuff and work together, or getting them to feel comfortable with you, and then be able to extend out that comfort to others. I do a lot of, I don't want to say team building work, but just like simple things like, okay, guys, everyone go write down what are 2 questions, and they're completely anonymous and they're online. And I say, how are you feeling today? 1 word. And how was your weekend? And then we do those things completely anonymous. And then I let them do group work. And I have noticed that students when they start to feel comfortable, it's not like the first couple weeks. It takes a while to grow community, right? But over time, students will start answering those questions in their groups. And I actually let them choose their groups. And I also let you choose a group of 1. So if a student doesn't want to get in a group and they want to ask the questions to themselves, I'm like, that's totally fine. Sometimes I make them do groups, but that's just something that I do. Go ahead, Nowell.
Wonderful. So back where it all began, I had been, let me start over. So in Fort Collins, ever since I moved here in 1995, I've recognized that I feel a person of color, and it's not necessarily the most diverse community. It's becoming one, which is fantastic. There's pockets of culture, I always say, but you don't see and feel like it's a very diverse community. It's, again, starting to become one. And so when I was, for the last, 8 years, we've always had students who come in that think they want to be a designer, and it's a predominantly traditional, some non-traditional students, but they always design for people who they feel like they are, right? So they come in and they're like, I'm a white middle-class girl who I can't wait to have my own house, so I'm going to design for myself, and this is my client bio. And they always had the same kind of look, right? And whether that be white or young and has money, it is what it is on this slide that I saw. And I finally, when I was developing a rubric for the last project in our sustainable design class, had this champion leader in my class, Adrienne, and she said, come on, you guys, every single one of our client bios looks alike. Why can't we start designing for a diverse demographic? And I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is my opportunity to go, she's right. Let's look at this. And then I made it something that was an extra credit scenario. Okay, so I had, that was my first go. I was like, okay, extra credit, we'll start there because that's what I feel comfortable with, because I'm changing everything at the last minute. So just an FYI, a client bio is like when you're taking on a new client and you're basically giving them a whole set of questions that really allow you to see the project, the people you're serving, whomever that is, that being a single person, a married couple, a community that is, a commercial design, but you're looking for like location, demographics, the person, who they are, who are you going to be designing for, what lifestyles they have, any client needs, any design problems that might be underway, if we need to talk about sustainability or living in place. So we collect all that, and that's our program. And naturally, we do that by talking to people in industry. But when you're studying as a student, you have to show proof of how you're getting from point A to point B. So this is like what we would normally get. I put this together as a mock-up, but this is a typical client bio that I would get from my students. Yes, they look like they're perhaps coming out of any middle class or upper class scenario, and they want to live in Aspen. They want to live in their forever home, and they have all the amenities there for entertaining their people. We've got highfalutin jobs. We have perfect furry babies. We have guest quarters. Not everybody has that. I don't have that, right? And so, but this is the kind of typical thing that I would get in the Dropbox after programming part 1. So that is something that I was like, okay, I need to follow my students' instructions and make this better. So when I started to do this, I would get into, okay, the first feeling of feeling uncomfortable when you're a new student studying interior design is they have their own design aesthetic. They are comfortable with only cool colors, only warm colors. so it's very set, and they have a hard time getting out of that comfort zone. And so in their 206, which is communication and design class, the very first discussion we have, which is they can't get away from it because they actually press send, I ask them what their favorite and their least favorite color is. So their client becomes their least favorite color. And all of a sudden they're like uncomfortable. They don't like it. And then by the end of the semester, they're like, I love peach. Now I'm into peach. Look at this. I did peach. And I'm like, yes, if you can do it, if I can do it, first of all, if I can do it, you can do it. I always say that because I've had such a, tough learning experience in my life, but now I found college. This is everyone's jam. So by doing just that in the very beginning class, that really helps students get out of their comfort level. Here's where when I started to elevate into my other classes and find that client pool that I'll share with you, I also started designing OER for intro class, kitchen and bath class. We're doing estimating and sustainable design. And so the challenges when I started developing that were finding a good pool of OER photography, whether that's interior design people, people of color, people with disabilities, or all abilities. So I was just struggling. And now that I've had this evolution of doing OER for the last year and a half, it looks a lot better. And Laylonda shared with me from one of her fantastic continuing education courses that she took, a couple links that had a plethora of wonderful images of people that look like us, right? And so we started really playing with that and developing some of this client pools. So Laylonda, do you want to talk a little bit about those two places? I can pull those websites up when we're done.
I can talk about them briefly, just because I want you to be able to showcase what you're doing. And then when we get back to questions, we could always come back to that.
Okay.
But I will say that the websites, we're looking at gender. So like different genders, different people together, different genders of people together with colors. And I was like, what? Like, different genders together with disabilities and people with color and people with less pigmentation all together to hanging out. It was just so beautiful. And so to me, I just get really excited by that because I grew up, I'm from a very diverse family. So it's always nice to see that, different people come from different things. And so I just think that it's really, I personally, now that I know that, I don't know his Front Range, but I know that there is a repository for photos. So that is something that I'm still working on, but I know that I know I can get that information, but it's already being done. Like people have been paid, or it's non-for-profit or whatever
I think you're frozen accidentally, Miss Laylonda. Okay, we'll come back to the repository conversation after we get out of this PowerPoint. Can anybody, slow down. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, very good. Very good. All right, so I'm going to move on. So this was just one of the examples that I started pulling images. So again, Laylonda really challenged me on this pool of visuals of people from different cultures. And she said to me, okay, this is great. However, we can go deeper because we don't know that that person is from Thailand. We don't know if that person is from Nigeria. They might look like they are, but I was like, oh, that's so proper because I don't look Saudi. People often say, you look Hispanic. Thank you, but I'm not. And so it's just one of those things that you have to kind of pay attention to and get deeper and deeper, because most of the time when you're working with somebody that has a person of color, they have a variety of diverse background. And so instead of putting them into a category, opening that up, because then your programming with your research on the people are going to be even more interesting, and you'll have more sustenance on how to design for that person. So this is a typical email that my students would receive, and here's your client, and so they can take it to the next level of their demographic information and understanding what the client needs are. This is one of my student examples. We're still working in this class. And so that particular students started really studying textiles and understanding what architecture felt and looked like from their native home. They also started understanding how to use line, shape, and texture, color, pattern, symbology, and really understanding artifacts and understanding how that affects them in their space, because people are trying to create spaces that make them feel like themselves and at home. So through art, furniture, fixtures and equipment, and interior finishes, they specify all the things that are going to be built out and applied in this space based on the research that they do from their country or countries. And so it's a lot of really fun research that students get the opportunity to do. And I find that most of them find meanings of the names of their clients too, and that becomes part of their presentation. So it's been a really fun way of creating intentional design with diverse backgrounds. So we have the next slide for Laylonda. Laylonda, are you back with us?
It said that there was a power glitch in his neighborhood, so some people might have been disconnected.
Okay. Okay, well, I'm just going to keep going and then we can take some questions and I'll show you some resources. So we talked through this online development of kitchen and bath. Laylonda and I started doing that, and she's really helped me kind of grow as a celebratory diversity instructor. I don't even know how else to say it. I really want to push the envelope as much and give that value added, so we become much more comfortable talking about people from various backgrounds. And so she has elevated my wish to help develop our students to be more culturally minded. So I had the showcase of the pool clients that they can pick from, and they can mix it up. So they don't have to keep the same verbiage with the same people. They can reorient the people that they want to be working with, and they can come up with their own too. But the pictures that I've created and the bios that I've created are intentionally for OER and published. So she helped me make this self-reflection that not everybody looks like that. And so being able to have some diversity in background conversations too when I give them their client bios. To be totally frank, the images that I was finding and promoting were kind of stereotypical. And so being able to like expand that and reflect on that and then develop even more dynamic client bios is really fun. And every time Laylonda and I meet as a team to develop this class online, we end up talking about DEI half the time, inevitably, because it's so important to both of us. If Laylonda's not with us on the Zoom meeting.
I am.
Yay! Okay.
Yay, I know technology, right? I am so glad that I know how to deal with technology. But the problem is I'm doing it. It looks like I lost internet. I don't even know how that's possible, but I did. And so it looks like I have no internet right now, but I was able to use my phone because phones are awesome. Perfect. So I just wanted to give a little bit of my experience really quick. Sorry, I'm a little frazzled, but I'll do my best. My video isn't showing, so forgive me for that. I've tried, it just doesn't, right? No video.
Yeah, we can see you.
Oh, you can? Because I can't. Okay, perfect. All right. Oh, thank you. So I would say with DEI and diversity, I think that a lot of times people believe that you're trying to start anew, meaning they think that if they add these little components in, it's going to make things worse. But what they don't realize is first of all, don't take them all on, right? I think sometimes people try to they're like, oh, there's 7 principles. Oh, I'm going to do all 7. And I'm like, are you? Because you're not even doing like 2. Why don't we just start off with 2? And then we can move on to, like, as Nowell will tell you, as her process, like she started doing all these new things, got super excited, and then was like, now I need to change all of these things. And I was like, okay. But it's been a wonderful. And so I would just say that, like, I think adding DEI into your courses, or inclusive design or universal design, however you want it, there's so many different names for it, will help you in a sense that it doesn't just help, first of all, your face-to-face students. It doesn't just help online students. It doesn't just help remote students. So different modalities, hybrid, it helps all students. When you start adding these things in, you'll be able to branch them out into all your different classes. And then on top of that, I just wanted to say that it also helps, like, even though you're bringing in people of color or bringing in people from other cultures or international, like all those things, maybe someone, for me, I come from a small town. I didn't experience certain cultures until I was in college. And that's not when you want to start experiencing new cultures, like you, because then you don't know how to act, because you're like, oh, did I offend them? I don't know. You know what I mean? And so having that opportunity just helps them feel more comfortable. And I think that's good for all fields. There's not one field right now that I don't think that you're not going to ever experience someone from another culture or someone from another ethnic group or someone who might have a disability, or you know what I mean? You're going to experience these things. So I just, that's kind of what I wanted to say, that I try to help bring these things at a low level, like whatever is most accessible. So what I would say, however your class looks, just take a step back from your class a little bit, look at it and be like, if I was like, what is something that would work into my content? What is something that would work into my class more naturally versus trying to go after some of the bigger things that maybe it may take a little while for you to do. And so that's kind of what we did with Nowell. Is Nowell already kind of had some projects. And so I said, let's just make them better. Like, let's just add these little things and let's scaffold some learning here, you know? And I just think that we just have a really good partnership, I think. So go ahead, Nowell.
Yeah, no, it's been a fantastic experience, and it's helped me with my face-to-face class as well, which is incredible, because I was always the frantic winger when I just walk in and be like, here's what I'm teaching you today. And I pull from all these different, D2L shelves from over the 12 years and all my personal experience. Now I have very intentional, pre-designed experiences for our students, and then we'll grow. And because the students teach me how to be a better human all the time, we will always grow. So that's my experience. It's a good one. And some things that I just want to kind of equate to, so that when we first started talking about this, what is inclusive design, it's very similar to ADA and universal design. So just think through, is it easy to access? Is it easy to facilitate? Am I sending a clear message? Is it fair for all? All right, so I want to do a quick, here are our resources, and I can take you directly to the OER space that I can show you. But instead, you guys can click that on your own. I'm going to do a new share, and I'm going to take you to my client pool. So you should be able to see stop share and reshare. This is always new for me. It's like every time it's new. Okay, now can you guys see my IND client pool? Fabulous. Okay, so there's that example that I showed you in our PowerPoint. And then I just started geeking out on all of the opportunities that we can incorporate for bringing so much diversity to this client pool. So whether they are from a different visually background with race and ethnicity, gender identification, they're all from all over the planet. And so they are allowed to completely mess around with as much of this dynamic background as they possibly want to, especially when it comes down to like what they do. But please don't be a CEO of a major corporation and you want to live in Aspen. That's like my #1 thing, okay? And also I want to bring in some like, okay, what is somebody that works for the Department of Vocational Rehab? What kind of lifestyle, what kind of things that they enjoy? Why did they get into that? So they're thinking deeper about the people that they're serving. Now that this particular person from Honduras, he works in a local school. So I'm trying to like promote social justice as well, the environment, understanding what nonprofit and philanthropy looks like. So they're having to do research on like what community partners they might foresee, and then that becomes kind of a resource for them as well. Highlighting the celebration of life, whether that's different things that they like to do when they have off time. So there's a ton of different backgrounds, some really wonderful visuals that Laylonda helped me find, but some really fun projects. So we have about 20 different slides to pick from, and that is going to grow and grow and grow. Any questions about this client pool?
I have a question for you, Nowell, more on a interior designer to interior designer. Hi. When you're doing this, do you find this is more beneficial than having, for instance, in my residential class, I have them, they are each other's client. One's the designer, one's the client, and vice versa. So they can ask questions and get ideas on FF&E and things. Is this a better way to do things rather than having somebody else answer those FF&E questions and styles and things like that? Do you find this is more beneficial than something like that?
I think that we morph that. That's a great question, Becca. Rebecca, there's definitely times where you're too close to it and you only want to specify what you like. And so having this person or client, then they have to say, these are the color schemes that they're really after. And they're making all those design decisions about against the program that they've created. So there's proof in the pudding along the whole way. I love the idea of students designing for each other because then they have to. But then if you add another complexity, so maybe they are a person from a different background representing that person. So now all of a sudden you're acting, which is so much fun to do anyway. And so, yeah, I think it lends itself to more creative reflection. Thanks for the question.
Thank you.
And I wanted to say something. I know this is an interior design, but one of the things I wanted to mention was this can be put in other, I'm a science person and there are like case studies and things like that I could adapt some of these techniques into, right? If you're English, I know some of you guys do papers and things like that. You could have these papers where the people are coming from other countries or other ethnic groups or having disabilities or things like that. I think that it's really helpful just to be thinking that we're just trying to give them what they might see in the real world, right?
Yes.
Because I do think that sometimes I would say this, K through 12, love it, but I'm not sure if they're fully preparing our students to be ready for adulthood, right? In the sense of we have some flexibility, right? But we also have to be kind of like, at one point we have to say, sorry, like we can't, this is not going to work, because at your real job, you would get fired right now, right? Like you might get some leniency. And so I always try to think of how can I prepare my students, even if it's just those soft skills, being able to be flexible, being able to, when you come across someone who maybe because you don't know how to interact with them because you never have, you don't feel comfortable, that you can somehow become comfortable. Like something that I will say that I've been told is that I'm good on my feet. And I was like, I don't know how. I was like, I was totally petrified. And they're like, really? They're like, but you never would have known it. And I go, that's because I've learned that even when you're in awkward situations, I just smile. I'm like, I'm just going to smile and just hope that it all works out, you know? And so with that, I'm just saying that like, we want our students not to like, when they come across an issue to all of a sudden just give up, right? And we don't, so I mean, I'm just giving like the soft skills. Those are things that I think that if we can teach our students some of those things along with the content, I think that they will be more successful, because we are seeing that people are going out into the workforce and they did really well in college and then they don't make it. They are not doing well, unfortunately. So
and I want to tell one quick last story. I had a student who graduated last year, I guess was, and she did the whole assignment, and her client was from a city, I can't remember exactly where she picked, in Nigeria. And then she started working for a cabinet company, and she had a client from the same city in Nigeria. And she called me and she was in tears happy. And she said, it was just so serendipitous that this person came into my life and I knew about the aesthetic of where she came from. And, you know, that kind of stuff, when the students tell you you're doing it right and that it was a very meaningful experience for them, that's when I know that this can be really advantageous in the classroom.
And you have a question. It says, oh, no, this is someone else. I'm sorry. There was a question to someone else. So sorry, my bad. I almost read it. Do we have any more questions for anyone? I don't know if I missed that, but.
There actually was a question about interior design when you're having white people incorporate aspects of client identity. Is there any sort of cultural competency training that prevents the white people from stereotyping or fetishizing their clients for clients from like a marginalized population?
That is an amazing question. And now that I have to address that, because that, we work around it, and it is definitely something that is a conversation all the time, but it's not intentionally designed in our classes because there's only so much we can give them, like credit wise, right? But as long as it's a component of every class's conversation that we talk through this, if there's a formal training that you all know about somewhere, I would absolutely be all ears to incorporate that into our training because it's so important.
All right. Thank you so much. I mislooked at it. So yay. Well, if you guys don't have any more questions, we were so excited to be here and present for you. Hopefully we gave you some tips. I know some of you were asking about the some of the links that I had sent Nowell. So should we put our emails in the chat? And then if you would just email us, we're more than happy to send you like whatever pictures, repositories, things like that we do have. And I know Nowell also had the templates. So if that's something that she would be willing to share out. So let's go ahead and do that before you guys all leave, or you can leave before that, it's up to you. And we will be more than happy to share those things with you. If you go to there were links on our presentation, but we realize you may not have access to those. So
yes, please email me if you have any questions, and I will send you all that I have. And the OER is public, so you can go on to that interior architecture and design OER and find all those client-based as well. Right. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for coming to our presentation.
Great job. Thank you.
Thank you. It was great. It was so great. Are you still recording?
Yeah.